one gets upset when women prefer to see women OBGYNs, and it would make sense that our patients want to see people that look like them. Someone is going to understand better if you have shared background, particularly when it comes to culture and race.
There is something to be said about going into an experience and not having to explain your existence to be able to receive treatment. And that's why a lot of Black people want to see Black psychiatrists and Black therapists.
But there's just not a lot of us out there.
You're listening to Inside Bipolar, a Healthline Media podcast, where we tackle bipolar disorder using real-world examples and the latest research.
Welcome to the show, everyone. This is your host, Gabe Howard, and I live with bipolar disorder. I'm also not here today. I've handed over control of the show to Dr. Nicole for this episode to do, well, whatever she likes, and I'm sure it's going to be awesome. But don't worry, I'll be back the next episode. Dr. Nicole, take it away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm Dr. Nicole Washington, a board-certified psychiatrist, and normally Gabe chimes in and says, and I'm Gabe, I live with bipolar disorder. But guess what, y'all? Today I have another board-certified psychiatrist. Today we have Dr. Leesha Ellis-Cox. Dr. Leesha, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Nicole.
Yes. When your team reached out, they recommended that we talk about disparities in mental health care, disparities in bipolar diagnosis, treatment. And we thought that'd be a fantastic show to do, because as much as things have changed, sometimes things haven't really changed. We can go back to the 19th century. So we're talking way, way back. There was a physician in the South, in my home state of Louisiana, Samuel Cartwright,
Yes.
who proposed the diagnosis of drapetomania. And it was the term that he proposed we use to describe this mental illness that caused enslaved African Americans to run away from their owners. Out the gate, 1800s, y'all are trying to run away from slavery. You must be ill because we're just trying to help you.
That's right.
So then we fast forward all of these centuries, and here we are. We have research. We have research to talk about the disparities that the African American community sees. Give us some highlights of the research and the disparities that we know exist for Black Americans with bipolar disorder.
So I'm glad that you took it way back, Dr. Nicole, particularly around stigma, around mistrust of the medical community, and just a general disconnect with wanting to seek psychiatric services. And then you add to it the Tuskegee Syphilis experiment that also just confounds this medical distrust, because this happened for 40 years in this country and didn't end until the 70s. And medical treatment was withheld from Black men suffering from syphilis just to see what the natural course would look like. So unfortunately, we have what I call a sordid past when it comes to Black people in this country that has led to the pervasive disparities that we continue to struggle with, even with research and advances in treatment. So thank you, Dr. Nicole, for really starting and talking about drapetomania. That was coined by Dr. Samuel Cartwright. And I think it really helps us understand how stigma around mental illness really began for Black people in this country. There are several factors, I think, that have led us to this place that we are now with the hesitation for Black people to seek treatment. There are about 14% of the country, give or take, is African American, but only 2% of psychiatrists are African American. So there's a dearth of mental health providers to go to when you're ready to seek psychiatric services. I think the number's about 4% for psychologists. I think the number's a little bit larger for therapists, but still it doesn't match the percentage of the population that identifies as Black or African American. So if we decide that we want to get help as Black and brown people, we also often are concerned about being labeled crazy and weak.
And as a Black physician, one of the things that I often feel wholeheartedly, and I can only imagine you also feel this wholeheartedly, it is it is being able to know the benefits of something. Like, I fully believe in the benefit of mental health treatment, and I'm always advocating for it, but I can't do that and not be willing to acknowledge all of the historical trauma that people of color have experienced at the hands of the mental health system.
Yes.
And that's a tough spot to be in as a physician trying to encourage people to seek treatment, but I know what the issues are.
Right.
And I love what I do. And I like to think of it as I love psychiatry and mental health treatment enough to call it out when it's not doing right by people. And there are times when we know it's not doing right. There are studies out there that talk specifically about misdiagnosis. So when we think about, what's going on bipolar related, there is data to support that Black and Hispanic people with bipolar disorder are misdiagnosed with schizophrenia more
That's right.
compared to white people.
So I've seen that data. 3 to 4 times more likely to be misdiagnosed with schizophrenia. I've seen it play out when I have patients that are discharged from the hospital. And I'm an outpatient psychiatrist. All of my work is in a clinic setting. And so I often have patients who are coming from, sometimes their first break is what we call it when they have their first onset of significant psychiatric illness. So they've discharged from the hospital following their first break with this label of schizophrenia, this diagnosis. And they come see me, and conducting a thorough, comprehensive psychiatric evaluation, it becomes clear that psychosis, which is being out of touch with reality, that typically we think about as, hallucinations, delusions, disorganized speech and behavior. But psychosis is a symptom of schizophrenia, but it is a symptom present in multiple psychiatric conditions, including mood disorders like major depressive disorder and bipolar disorder. And it seems that what has happened, and unfortunately what continues to happen, is as soon as there is some utterance of, I was hearing voices, I felt like people were trying to get me, there's, echoes of paranoia, then the ears get turned off by the healthcare provider, and it's immediately, you know what, this is schizophrenia. So if we don't do our due diligence to make sure that we do a robust clinical history that encompasses looking at mood symptoms like mania and depression, then it's going to be missed. And it happens often for Black and brown patients, especially with healthcare providers who don't look like them.
And what's the harm in that happening? So I want to make sure people understand why we care. Why do we care that you're being misdiagnosed with schizophrenia? What is the harm in that downstream?
So it would just be like if I said you just had high blood pressure, but you actually had diabetes, and all I gave you was blood pressure medicine, and your blood sugar was shooting up, and there are acute negative outcomes and then long-term negative outcomes. So same kind of thing, Dr. Nicole. When you get a misdiagnosis of schizophrenia, the treatment that I'm likely to give you is going to only target psychotic symptoms and leave your mood symptoms untouched. And so when you have untreated mood symptoms in the short term, you can really struggle with worsening depression or mania if it's bipolar disorder. And we know that that can lead to disruptions in work activity. So you were previously employed, got sick, should have been able to return to work with treatment, but because you didn't get adequate treatment, your symptoms are worsening. So you have increased absenteeism, and then that can lead to job loss. Unfortunately, one of the most devastating consequences of untreated mental illness, and particularly with mood disorders, can be suicide attempts or death by suicide, family disruptions. I mean, this is not without significant risk of harm to the people that we serve.
There's a lot of factors that contribute to a person being misdiagnosed. The big one that comes to a lot of our minds is this either conscious bias or unconscious bias that we have in the healthcare system. Everybody has biases. I don't care who you are. I don't care where you come from. I don't care. We all hold some kind of bias. The problem is when we hold those biases as healthcare professionals and we don't do anything to recognize them or try to keep them in check or learn about them. And people get really upset when you start saying, "Oh, you're biased." Physicians get mad when you say, "Oh, you're biased against this particular group of people," and people get angry and say angry things and hateful things. When it is a simple fact, we all have biases that we carry around with us.
It's decidedly part of the human experience to have bias.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I think if we can get to the point where we can say, you know what, we all have it. Let me figure out what mine are and how I can let these things not interfere with my patient care. I think that's the way we should approach it. I mean, don't you agree with that?
I do. But I think what is so triggering for people is that I think a lot of healthcare providers believe erroneously that bias equals racist or sexist, that they attach it to prejudicial views. That really, that isn't at all what we're saying. We are all kind of designed and accustomed to feel comfortable around people who look like us, come from the same place that we do, raise children the same way we do. It's, there's comfort in similarities. And differences are just that, they're different. It's what we attach to those differences that obviously can contribute sometimes to problems, but there's nothing inherently wrong or uncommon about having biases. What becomes problematic, as you already pointed out, Dr. Nicole, is when we are defensive and unwilling to address or acknowledge first said biases and then address them, because that gets to that contributes to misdiagnoses, that contributes to diminishing pain for African American patients and withholding pain treatment. It contributes to a number of healthcare disparities, not just in psychiatric illness, but really across multiple specialties and illness categories.
Some of the factors that contribute to misdiagnosis surround the delay in actually receiving treatment. There is this thought that Black and brown communities are more likely to not seek out services early on. And then that adds to the intensity of symptoms when they do present. So if we're presenting with more severe mania, more severe psychosis, there's some thought that may play a role. So if we're going to go down the road of that could add to the misdiagnosis or the delayed diagnosis, let's talk about some of the things that interfere with us receiving treatment.
Absolutely.
So out the gate, we got to talk about stigma in our communities. We have to talk about stigma in Black and brown communities. I do, and I know you do. I see Black and brown people weekly who, when I ask about family history of mental health, I get, "Oh, we don't talk about that. I wouldn't know. I suspect somebody has something, but they would never go seek out treatment." Or I hear, "Oh, I'm being treated, but my parents don't know that I'm being treated because I just didn't want to have to deal with hearing their thoughts about treatment." This stigma is going to be the death of us. And we're back with Dr. Leesha Ellis-Cox discussing racial disparities in the mental health system.
I do think it's starting to get better, ever so slightly, as we have more folks on social media who are willing to talk about it. But a lot of times I just hear, I am not crazy. I don't need to see I am not crazy. Or kind of related, as you said, is I don't need folks up in my business. So mom and dad, sisters, brother, like they can't know because I can't have folks in my business. And yes, the death of us indeed. But closed mouths don't get fed. That's what I tell people. And oftentimes waiting, not addressing, as I say, sweeping things under the rug, rarely has it led to a resolution or profound improvement in symptoms. So you sitting here suffering in silence. And it really isn't even silent because a lot of times people know, they might not know what it is, but your family's like, oh no, I don't know. Now they may not tell you to get help, but they are talking about you because they love you and they're concerned and they're trying to figure out what is all this going on. So you're not suffering in silence. It is apparent to people who know you and care about you that something ain't right, but we have to do something about it.
And I believe our mental health pool of providers should look like our communities. And when they don't look like our communities, that's where the problem comes in. So how does a person go about finding a non-Black psychiatrist therapist if they don't have the option for a Black one and they want one? How do they navigate that?
Now that is a tough question. I do think that, again, while in many ways things feel very stagnant, I do think that there is a growing interest in providers, diverse providers, wanting to really be able to meet the needs of the people that come into their office. So there are websites that have search engines like Therapy for Black Girls, where you can look for Black therapists. There's
Therapy for Black men.
And yes, Therapy for Black Men, Melanin and Mental Health. So there are several organizations that have search engines on their websites where maybe you can't see someone like in close proximity, but you have telehealth options available to you. And so they're licensed in the state where you live, so you can still have access. So I think we've been able to expand our network through telehealth services. Sometimes one of the easiest ways really is word of mouth. You have someone, a friend or a coworker or a family member that you have been able to trust, and a patient will say, "Who did you see?" And this friend or coworker may say, "I saw so-and-so." Then it's like, well, are they Black or are they Hispanic? No, but this is someone who I feel like they get it. They were, willing to listen and curious about my experiences. And so they had an affirming visit or affirming sessions.
But even getting a word of mouth referral, then we still have to go back to breaking down that stigma, because then I have to be willing to say, hey, don't you see a therapist? Or do you know anyone who sees a therapist? I think I need to see somebody. And we don't always do that. I mean, we will hunt somebody down across the grocery store if their hair looks good, though, and we'll try to figure out who does your hair, what number color they using, what what kind of hair is that. We will go to the ends of the earth to figure out about somebody's hair, who did your makeup, who's your makeup artist, they did a great job. We will hunt people down. But then when it comes to something so important, we'll sit back and just kind of I don't want to say I need to see somebody, because then that would out me. Then they're going to know that I'm trying to see somebody. We don't care, because you're trying to get better and you're trying to grow. And that's all we really care about is, are you getting better? Are you able to grow? Are you able to live that best life that Dr. Leesha was talking about? And that's where we need to break it down. I think we do need to be more intentional about seeking those referrals from people within our circles, because you'd be surprised who also is in therapy or who also is seeing a psychiatrist but hasn't told you.
That's right. Well, if you need to pull the whole asking for a friend, then ask for a friend. Friend is you, yes, but they don't need to know that the friend is you. So you can ask for a friend. You can do that with word of mouth referrals. And your primary care or another physician that you may, or healthcare provider that you may be seeing, may also just know of other psychiatrists or therapists who, again, are open-minded and, we used to say cultural competent, but now we say really someone who's more embodies cultural humility as the standard. Cultural competence was the term that was in favor several years ago. But for many, it started to feel like in the quest for being culturally competent, it was a bunch of stereotypes that really grouped people in just two categories that were, again, undergirded by stereotypes that, all Hispanic people are like this and all Black people think like this. And the Black race is not monolithic. Hispanic race is not monolithic. Caucasians are not monolithic. And so it didn't really incorporate healthcare providers taking ownership of their own journey in being responsive to the needs of their patients, but also what they needed to do to help understand and address those needs in a more impactful way. So with cultural humility, there's really this kind of curiosity about our biases, as we talked about earlier, the biases that we all have, irrespective of our race, age, gender, national origin. So being willing to be curious about those biases and take steps, active steps, whether that's starting with the Harvard implicit bias test or taking trainings to further understand what illnesses look like in different cultures, but owning that part of it, as well as being sensitive to, again, what our patients bring with them when they come in seeking health services. So it's a shift that just requires us to take a role. It's not patients' stuff. It's our stuff too.
I definitely think that it is getting better, as you say, ever so slightly getting better. And I do think that younger generations are going to be the ones to change it. I think it is younger Black and brown people who are going to be the ones. Those are the young people I'm seeing who say, I hadn't told my parents that I'm in treatment yet. So I'm going to keep that on the down low for now, but I know I need better. And then I've had young people come back and say, oh, the most wonderful thing happened. My mom said, oh, you seem so much happier. Oh, I noticed that you seem like you're just in a really good space. And that was an entryway for that young person to start talking to their elders in their circles about mental health treatment and therapy and treatment for depression and treatment for things. I think this is where we're going to see it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. 100%. I think the other thing that sometimes happens is we're rocked by stories on social media or traditional media of some influencer or some celebrity who has decided to end their life by suicide, and the community as a whole is struggling with, well, how did this happen? Where did this come from? Everything seemed okay. And I think sometimes it can be a wake-up call in the obviously most unfortunate circumstances, but it can be a wake-up call to individuals who recognize this is big. If I don't do something to address this, this could be the outcome.
Education is a huge part of this. We need to educate ourselves, basically. We need to have great understandings of what it is that we're seeing. I do think in Black and brown communities, there has been forever this theory of, but we don't really do that. That's not us. We don't do that. We don't complete suicide. We don't do that. Like, that's not what we do. And there are a lot of Black and brown people who have had this, well, we don't do that. That's what other people do. That's not what we do. But we know that that's not reality.
Yeah, absolutely. And the stats are changing. The stats are showing that this, belief we had that Black and brown people don't die by suicide is a myth, because we've seen the numbers rising, particularly in our prepubescent and adolescent Black youth. And it is alarming and devastating to see that play out, especially when it's in your community close to home. And education is so critical. And while I do have a mug that says, "Do not confuse your Google search with my medical degree," I do think that Dr. Google, because it's a safe, unobtrusive way for people to start looking and seeing and wondering if this could be. And sometimes in that search, sometimes there may be, an online assessment that someone feels like they can do and then take to their primary care. Medical care as a whole is certainly underutilized by Black and Brown people. So not just unique to psychiatric care.
The one thing as you were talking that came to me is also don't give up. There are very few things that we give up on as easily as we give up on mental health treatment. There are very few things I found that we try one time and say, "Oh, that's not for me," and never go back. But so many people will say, "I went to therapy one time. It didn't help me, so I just didn't go back." Like, how do you know? How do you know? Like we are a persistent people. Black and brown populations in this country have overcome so much just to be in the spaces where we are. And we go to one therapy session and then we're ready to just quit and give up. Or you try one medication and you say, "Oh, I don't know. I had a headache for 2 days and I just quit going." That can't be the place in our lives that we just give up and tuck our tails and run.
Yeah, very true. So if they're making it to my office, I will remind patients, I'm like, "And how long has this been going on? And how long did it take for you to get to me?" Okay, so let's give that some time. And if it didn't work, I always say, "I got lots of options. Like, we got options. I just need you to come back so I can help." Like, it's not a pressure situation. And so I think that when we create an environment that, again, is nurturing and supportive and respects the things that they value and prioritize, I just want you to get better. I just want you to feel better, right? That is the goal. That's what you came for. That's what I'm here for. And so let's figure out how to do this thing together.
So if you're out there and you have bipolar disorder and you're a Black or brown person and you're thinking, "I don't know about treatment. I don't know. I'm not sure." If you have a loved one who has what you suspect to be bipolar disorder or confirmed bipolar disorder and they're struggling, be that sounding board, be that safe space where they can land so that you can direct them and help guide them into the right spaces. I think we need to guide each other and guide our loved ones, guide them right to a Dr. Leesha or a Dr. Nicole, and let us take it over from there. We really just want to see you win. We want to see you win. We want to see you live your best life. And we know that the best way, if you're living with bipolar disorder, the best road to living your best life is with treatment. And whether that's a bunch of pieces of your puzzle or just a few, we want to help you put it together so that you can live that soft life that we're all searching for, right?
I'm still searching for the soft life. Yes.
Whew, girl, me too. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Dr. Leesha, for being here. Where can people find you online to learn more about you?
So you can go to my website, drleesha, leesha.com. I am on Instagram and Facebook at Dr. Leesha. And you can email me at hello@drleesha.com as well. So come find me for sure.
Find Dr. Leesha. Thank you again, Dr. Leesha, for being here. And to all of our listeners, thank you for being here as well. I'm Dr. Nicole Washington. You can find me on all social media platforms at Dr. Nicole Psych to see all the things I have my hand in at any given moment. Wherever you download this episode, please follow or subscribe to the show. It costs you nothing. And do us a small favor, share the show, send a text message, put it on social media, bring it up in a support group, send an email, tell your barber or your hairdresser because they'll tell everybody. Sharing the show is how we grow. We will see everyone next time on Inside Bipolar.
You've been listening to Inside Bipolar from Healthline Media and PsychCentral.com. Have feedback for the show? Email us at show@psychcentral.com. Previous episodes can be found at psychcentral.com/IBP or on your favorite podcast player. Thank you for listening.